We cannot, because we need not, run the risk of having nuclear accidents occur because of the millennium bug.
There you go, looking good.
When weapons are on, a hair trigger alert.
Coordinate track 7175.
And the potential for a Y2K related accidental launch could lead to
Anybody scared yet?
Nuclear countdown. Dat is het verhaal van een aantal Amerikanen, waaronder congresleden, die waarschuwen voor de risico's van een nucleaire ramp.
I am greatly troubled by the absence of congressional interest thus far in having the hearings that would be able to identify the problems in the schedule set forth with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, resolving the issue of whether or not auditing 12 plants is sufficient rather than all 103 plants to make sure that they will all be in full compliance, and identifying what the consequences will be if in fact there is some type of breakdown. So we are forced to have this proceeding because there has been no hearing thus far in the House of Representatives. I think though, because we're having this hearing, because we're having this meeting, there is going to be generated a much higher interest level in a Congress that has thus far turned a blind eye to the issue. We have a responsibility to make sure that the hearings and oversight have been held. Congress is a stimulus response institution.
Ja, een Amerikaans congreslid die waarschuwt tegen de gevaren van nucleaire wapens die mogelijk ten gevolge van computerfouten rond het jaar 2000, het Y2K zoals ze dat noemen, problemen zouden kunnen geven. Wapens in het westen, wapens uit het voormalige Oostblok. Maar niet alleen wapens, ook de nuclear power plants, de atoomreactoren, de energieopwekking in Amerika maakt er nog ruim gebruik van. Er zijn 103 powerplants met atoomkracht. En dat zijn vaak hele oude dingen. De laatste is in 1974. Daar is de bouwopdracht voor uitgegaan. Dus het is een ontwerp van 1974. Maar er zijn allerlei aanpassingen gedaan. En er zijn wel degelijk problemen. Een groot aantal experts komen hierna aan het woord. We laten daar een stukje van zien van deze film. Die toch wel zo nu 2 maanden voor het millennium eigenlijk wel laat zien wat het probleem is. En dat het nog lang niet is opgelost.
We also saw the rise of 2 major industries in the United States that profoundly shape our lives today. Digital computers took off in 1956 and never looked back. Uses and needs for computers blossomed so fast that they had to cut a few corners, like lopping off the first 2 digits of the year. Nobody thought the early software written then would last into the next century anyway. Commercial nuclear power also got its start back in the 1950s, with even higher hopes of providing America with electricity that would be too cheap to meter. Over the years, we discovered that they cut some corners too, including some that pose risks for public safety. And over the years, market forces have brought the costs of computers down while improving their efficiency. At the same time, high cost and concerns about safety have led the nuclear industry to wither on the vine. Not a single new reactor has been successfully ordered in the United States since 1974. Now, 4 decades after the birth of the computer and the nuclear power industries, we find that the corners cut in computers and the corners cut in nuclear plants have boxed us into a corner. Nuclear plants are infested with Y2K computer bugs, An audit at one plant, Seabrook in New Hampshire, found 1,304 Y2K problems, including 12 with safety implications, and another 13 that could shut down the reactor. The NRC claims that they have no evidence of Y2K problems with safety-related systems, that the reactor controls are analog and therefore immune from the Y2K disease. But the digital readouts on which plant operators rely are susceptible to the disease. False information could lead to dangerously bad decisions, and the Y2K disease can be contagious. If Y2K problems in the electrical utilities shut down some of the nation's electrical grids, then nuclear plants will have to scram, shut down, and they will have to rely on their backup diesel generators to keep the coolant flowing and the radioactive fuel intact. But those diesel generators built for just such an emergency sometimes turn out not to work. If the nuclear stations black out, we may all have to scram as well. Perhaps lost in nostalgia for the 1950s, nuclear utilities have been slow in coming to grips with the Y2K monster. And the NRC has mostly relied on industry action and reporting rather than adopting a more aggressive trust but verify approach. In fact, the NRC reports that it plans to audit progress on Y2K issues at only 12 of the nation's nuclear plants. Those audits that have been conducted so far have found significant attention being paid by the industry to the Y2K issue, but also thousands of bugs that are yet to be fixed, some of which would cause plant shutdowns. In addition, the audits found that some plants, such as Brunswick in North Carolina, are relying on vendors to certify the Y2K readiness of their products, while others, such as Hope Creek in New Jersey, have found such vendor verifications to be unreliable. Plants that have done Y2K testing have sometimes been surprised. At the Peach Bottom plant in Pennsylvania last month, the primary and backup monitoring computers crashed for 7 hours due to Y2K testing. And in Sweden, a reactor's computers failed when the date was advanced not even to the year 2000, but to September of 1999. NRC's contingency plans in case problems do show up on New Year's Day also are somewhat laissez-faire. It is particularly disturbing to some of us that the NRC draft contingency plan provides for letting plants violate their licenses and keep running in order to make sure electricity remains available. Somehow, preserving public health and safety has been twisted to mean keeping the plants running in less than safe conditions, not shutting the plants down when necessary. In the 1950s sci-fi movie, humanity was saved from the nuclear baby Godzilla. We still have time before the clock strikes 2000 to meet the nuclear Y2K monster.
We don't know, nor can we predict all of the problems, all of the initial problems that could happen. We've been surprised by a lot of things, shutdown of gas meters, taxi system failures, other types of problems on embedded and both software and embedded systems. We also cannot predict the systemic ripple effect. It's just too much for any human being or group of human beings to predict how far out into the future this is going to go and how serious it will be. The big challenge we have in front of us is that the global problem was not addressed in time, and particularly outside the U.S., but also in the U.S., we have made some progress, but not as much as we've needed to make to get everything fixed. The legal statistic, one lawyer, an expert actually in this field, estimated we'll be seeing about $1 trillion of year 2000 litigation over the next 25 to 30 years. Here's something that's particularly disconcerting. Of the code that has been fixed and tested by the systems analysts out there, Typical audit results have found that there's anywhere from 100 to 1,000 or more date-related errors in systems that have been fixed and tested. That says that the work that we're doing to fix systems and test systems is inadequate. It is not good enough to eliminate all of the problems in these systems. What you see and what you hear and what you're reading in the newspapers and on television, and from John Koskinen, who's going to come out shortly and say that 79% of mission-critical systems in the federal government have been addressed, what you're hearing is not always true. And underlying all of this are situations which people would rather not talk about or let you hear about.
I come here today with three things which I believe have to be done between now and the end of the year. First, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission must do an audit, not of just 13 operating plants, but of every nuclear power plant in the United States to make sure that every plant can pass muster so that they are ready to operate on January 1st in the year 2000. So that's number one. Number two, the NRC needs to assure that reliable backup power sources will be available for all of the reactors that are operating when the millennium arrives, so that we can be assured that critical safety systems are operating even in the event that the reactor is shut down due to the Y2K related problem. And third, with regard to nuclear weapons, President Clinton should immediately propose to Boris Yeltsin that all of the U.S. and Russian nuclear weapons be taken off of alert status. The Cold War is over. Nuclear weapons should not be on alert status, and we should challenge the British, the Chinese, and the French to follow our lead. We cannot, because we need not, run the risk of having nuclear accidents occur because of the millennium bug. So my concern is that when weapons are on a hair trigger alert and the potential for a Y2K related accidental launch could lead to all nuclear weapons states putting their finger on the button, anticipating some response, even if we're able to avert it, that it would be better for us to build up a common sense, confidence building measure by de-alerting all nuclear weapons in the world in anticipation of January 1st. There is an electronic El Nino which could potentially affect every civilian and military computer in the world. We shouldn't run the risk of nuclear power plants on nuclear weapons going awry on January 1st in the year 2000.